Hello, good evening. Welcome to Camnet Television Main News. My name is Jeffrey Ziambo to present. Our top stories in the news. A LUSAKA male adult dies on the spot after being crushed by a loader. CCZ disapproves government's move to offer Kenyan farmers land. PF urges government to reintroduce subsidies on essential commodities. In international news, Hotel Rwanda hero Paul RUSESABAGINA'S prison sentence commuted. And in sports news, Zambia under 23 confident they can beat Egypt on Sunday.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Hello again, the news in detail. A 35-year-old man identified as Nitengeleko Mwale has been crushed to death by a loader at an open-pit dolomite mine in Lusaka West. Speaking to Camden News, mother to the deceased, Romance Banda, says her son worked as a driller at Silverstone Crushers Limited and was Thursday afternoon crushed by a loader he was on after its brakes failed, hence careering off into the open-pit mine. Meanwhile, Mines Safety Manager Bernard Zulu says the incident was simply an accident, stating that the mine would take care of all funeral costs. More in this report.
She has lost her son at only 35 years old, leaving his 7 children orphaned and his young wife widowed. This is Romance Banda, a mother of Lusaka West, who says her son Nitengeleko Mwale worked as a driller at Silverstone Crushers Zambia Limited, a company that mines dolomite stone, but died at the same mine Thursday afternoon at around 13 hours. The aggrieved mother explains that her son was involved in an accident along with 3 others, but that he was the only one who died, adding that the mine owners took her son to the mortuary immediately after the accident without any family member being notified. She further alleges that the mine sent out dogs against family members who came to the mine after they heard about the incident.
Wamwali irate wamwali ampeleka kudala ku mochari ndau bwanja 13 hours ina ndiye kubwera nafika ku nyumba talira maliro kulibe formation ili yonse na bwana ta manje mwe wantu pametirira kuno sitiziva kani mwana watu wafa kulibo lwa kampani wamene wabwerako kuno so tiende kwa mene kutikaone ne pamene ninabwera kuno mairo ati manje imwe mu bantu mwana wafa pamene wamwalira simungasakire family palibe chamana ni yanka bato wamene anabwera wafesi atenzana asegulira na magalu kuti abalumise mayimbwa
enzana abwera mailo kucheni kuseni kwenda kuno kunchito tinaonana naye so pamene onana naye nakambisana naye natati bwanja ati obwino mwenda kuti nienda kunchito nangemo mwalova natawe naine nienda kunchito so pamene ananyamuka kuja kufika kuma 12 kumazulo ku nimvera pamene nakomboka kuma 2 koloko kumachani kuma 4 koloko nimvera ati kuli maliro kunyumba nati maliro akuti eni ndana mwalira ati tengereko ndiye pamene nachoka kuja kwenda kunyumba ine kwenda pamene kuja kwamene achitale ndiyevi ufika kuja awezona napezati kuti bantu bali full mu nyumba balira chape.
Safety manager at the mine Bernard Zulu explains that the accident happened after 4 people, among them the deceased, got on a loader meant for 1 person and were taking diesel to excavators that had run out of fuel in the mine when the loader lost brakes along the way and careered off into the open pit.
Our machine, the excavator at the pit, had run out of diesel, so it was unable to come up. So we decided to use the loader to improvise. We put drums in front of the bucket to take the diesel down the pit. So the loader operator was moving out to take the diesel, and then these guys, the four guys that went on the machine, they are drillers. So for them, it was a sort of transport to go there. Unfortunately, I was not there to see what happened or to stop them from going onto the machine because it was lunchtime. Everyone was busy having lunch. So they were going back to the pit after having their lunch. Yes, so what happened, it turned. I was not there, like I said, but the people that saw what happened said, I think it lost some brake, or maybe there was we lost a life. Three other guys that were involved are okay. One is sustained an injury. He has a fracture on his right thigh.
Accidents that have been happening in various mines across the country have become a source of concern for stakeholders in this area, and they have been calling for heightened operations on mining activities around the country. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
The Council of Churches in Zambia, CCZ, has bemoaned the move by the government to offer Kenyan farmers land for large-scale farming in the country that will allow them export their yields back to boost their country's food supply and security. CCZ General Secretary Father Emmanuel Chikoya says the move has not advanced any interest of Zambians nor support local farms to grow and export agricultural products to needy nations such as Kenya and others. He reiterates that the country has enough farmers with necessary expertise and skills to manage large-scale productions. Meanwhile, Father Chikoya has called on the government to come up with mechanisms that will increase agricultural production for export to ready markets such as Kenya.
This move does not help to fight against our own poverty and inequality that exists in land distribution. The Bible actually even cautions us that we should not give away, the ancient landmark, meaning when you are given land, you have land, don't easily give it away. And so we are taken aback by this seemingly, keen interest to bring people to take on land at the expense of our own people. How can we start importing farmers to produce food for their own countries using our land amidst high youth unemployment levels and poverty? Does this entail that we do not have or cannot mobilize local farmers that can take up the huge portions of land for the benefit of boosting both local and foreign supply? CCZ believes that the country has enough farmers with necessary expertise and skills to manage large-scale productions. The government itself needs to come up with mechanisms to increase agricultural production for export to ready markets such as Kenya, and can do so through the Zambia National Service and the Zambia Correctional Services that can take up most of the unemployed youths.
The National Democratic Congress Party faction has restructured its top leadership by removing its interim president, George Sichula, and two other officials. Speaking to party members in Lusaka Friday, party national spokesperson Emmanuel Malite says the party's governing council came up with this decision after realizing that their embattled interim leader, Mr. Sichula, was meeting the former leader, Chishimba Kambwili. Mr. Malite notes that this is a threat to the party's functionaries and the upcoming case in the courts of law. He notes that after the court's decisions next week, in which Savoy Imboela, Chishimba Kambwili and Axon Kaonga have been taken to court for impersonation, the NDC party will hold its convention to allow for elected leaders to take up the challenge of driving the party's agenda. Meanwhile, the party has put interim Secretary General who hopes to unite the party until the convention is held.
What has been happening from the other side? There are individuals that we are going to let go and they continue being found with Bakambwe. Because now that they know that they are going to face court, they wanted to weaken this case that is coming next week. What do? They started meeting who we had put in Dr. Chula, Mr. George Chula, and Dr. Mbulo, who was acting as Secretary General. This is on record. We questioned them as the National Governing Council. We questioned them when we heard those stories. We questioned them. Did you meet Dr. Kambwe? And they agreed. So now we have a disciplinary code of conduct as we face, because in politics, delay of making a decision can cost you. People have suffered, people have lost their jobs just to make sure that NDC is there. So somebody cannot act selfishly to weaken this case. Hence, we have made decisions again as National Governing Council to let go and relieve of the duties of one, Mr. George Chula, and Dr. Mbulu.
Leaders that actually have been dropped should be able to thank the party for being lenient. Because the last time, when we had the former President Musenke, the way it was an expansion and stuff like that. But we say, no, let's give them a second chance. We are a group of leadership that believes in second chance, so that they reflect. You know, at the end of the day, they will be able to provide their ability in working, so that at the end, we know that we have these people, they have repented, and now we are moving as a team.
United Party for National Development, UPND, says it is shameful that the former ruling Patriotic Front has continued to be the loudest in condemning the current administration on its alleged failure to run the country, when they should be reflecting on what Zambians to kick them out in 2021. In an interview, UPND National Trustee Grace Kalue says PF officials, such as leader of the opposition in Parliament, Brian Mundubile, have continued to call out the UPND on its alleged failure to reduce the cost of millimil fuel and fertilizer, when the PF failed to attain most of the UPND's achievements, which include the payment of retirees. The UPND National Trustee has also rubbished calls by PF Media Director Antonio Mwanza for President Hakainde Hichilema to apologize to former President Edgar Lungu on alleged disrespectful sentiments made against him. More in this report.
Having been elected into office on 12th August 2021, almost 2 years down the line, the United Party for National Development, UPND, has not been spared by the former ruling Patriotic Front, PF, for allegedly rising on a platform of falsehood. Key attack areas of critics like the PF have been campaign promises of the UPND, bordering on reducing the cost of living through ensuring affordable fuel, fertilizer, and millimil. The UPND has therefore been accused of hoodwinking the Zambian people, and top among the critics has been leader of the opposition in Parliament and PF presidential hopeful Brian Mundubile. Reacting to the stone throwing by the former ruling party, UPND National Trustee Grace Kalue has responded to the sentiments.
Now, mweze kuona ba Mundubile kuti during your term of office, bantu benze kuloga wapa justice batenga mabible, bantu benze kutenga mabible kupempela ndalama zamene banasebenzela munaba pasapo echi agwapo ababwesana ndalama manje so batazala abapasa nacho chamwe babani mumala Zesco majeshi yamene munasi ya muzesco yefe wamene safu na ukamba kamba chabe like mwamene mubobotela akitakria.
Ms. Kalue has further addressed sentiments attributed to PF Media Director Antonio Mwanza, who is of the view that President Hakainde Hichilema should apologize to former President Edgar Lungu after the exchange of words the duo had during the period of Youth Day celebrations.
Antonio Mwanza, kutumpo watampa. Uko kutumpa Antonio Mwanza. Antonio Mwanza uko kutumpa. If you were brave enough, ngawaliye baba Lungu elo bamwe bidati pantu kutumpa kwa chilamu, ngamwadina that no boss. Mwebe nati na chita reverse. There is nothing wrong to do that. Na chita reverse nishi Pantu yomaye wakutela ati pantu ukutumpa kwa chilamu tulefu ayafile mujele is a human being. Chisha adifishe HH pakuti ayafile mujele. The whole of HH after because of politics.
The UPND National Trustee says the party is aware of false propaganda against it, adding that they will not stand and watch as these falsehoods unfold. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
A University of Zambia historian, Professor Bizek Piri, is hopeful that Zambia's state of democracy, particularly intra-party democracy, will improve in the country after the Democracy Summit, which is to be held in Lusaka with the United States of America and other countries in 6 days' time from the 29th to the 30th of March 2023. Speaking to Camnet News, Professor Piri says the country is a beacon of democracy in Africa as it has successfully seen the transition of 3 administrations, but notes that the same cannot be said about the state of intra-party democracy. It states that if to fully lead by example, intra-party democracy has to be encouraged, stating that it is currently questionable in many political parties today.
That is coming 29th to 30th of this month is a very important summit, and we're talking about democracy. And that Zambia is among the 4 countries that are going to host is a demonstration that the other countries have recognized the way Zambian democracy has been growing and stabilizing. And what it shows is that from the time that we attained independence in 1964, one of the things that has stood out very clearly in Zambia's political history is that we have shown a peaceful transition from one government to another, from one political party to another. Now we have the 4th party in power and we have the 7th president in power. And each one of them has taken over very peacefully. The former president has handed over the one who is elected peacefully. That in itself is an indication that democracy in Zambia is not something that people just talk about, but something that actually happens. And as a result of that, it moves on and it is demonstrating. So that conference, therefore, is a very, very good, something that is very, makes Zambians very proud that we have a democratic system that works. And others are copying from us. We are a good example. We are a shining example.
The Patriotic Front PF members of parliament have asked government to reintroduce subsidies since it has failed to reach a conclusion in the debt restructuring process. Speaking at a media briefing in Lusaka Friday, PF Chinsali member of parliament Kalolwe Mukosa says the current administration has keenly imposed all the harsh conditions attached to the IMF program on the Zambian people, yet it has failed to reach debt restructuring. Mr. Mukosa wondered why the process has taken too long, which has continued to affect the Zambian people. Meanwhile, leader of the opposition in parliament, Brian Mundubile, says the democracy of the country is at stake and has wondered why investigative bodies have not moved to investigate 2 cabinet ministers who have been implicated in corrupt scandals. More in this report.
Despite having been behind the contracting of unsustainable debt levels for the country, the Patriotic Front members of parliament have wondered why the current administration has failed to reach the debt restructuring process despite having clinched the International Monetary Fund IMF program and enacting all the harsh conditionalities on the Zambian people attached to the program. Speaking at a media briefing in Lusaka Friday, Patriotic Front Chinsali member of parliament Kalolwe Mukosa has since asked the government to consider reintroducing back subsidies in the fuel sector in order to relieve the Zambian people from the huge burden that have come with the high fuel prices.
What is interesting is that despite us having started experiencing the pain of this debt restructuring process, we have reached a stalemate. And there is no meaningful explanation as to why the debt restructuring process hasn't reached the logical conclusion. If the March ends and they fail to conclude this process, we are appealing to the government that maybe we should go back to the situation where we were, where we can provide subsidies.
Other opposition leaders have raised concerns on the current state of maize, which is Zambia's staple food, adding that they have come across information that the high prices of mealie meal currently prevailing on the Zambian market is as a result of not having enough maize in the country.
Is it that the minister is telling the nation? At one point he's saying we have enough stocks of maize to feed the nation. On the other hand, people have started queuing for minimum. So really, this government is not being sincere by not being truthful.
The rising cost of basic essential commodities for the survival of our people is getting to alarming stages and requires some immediate intervention. We have seen, the growth of the bulk of our people, getting physically weak and others falling ill because of lack of access to basic nutrition.
And LUSAKA Member of Parliament George Chisanga says the current President Hakainde Hichilema is undermining the fight against corruption and has called for a national indaba in which all stakeholders will be allowed to come on board and discuss democratic matters.
I think the time has now come for this country to take these instances of counter violence head on. And in order for us to achieve the desired goal, we want to make an earnest call to the Ministry of Home Affairs and Internal Security to maybe organize an endeavor for the nation to bring stakeholders beyond the police themselves, because the police are not able to manage these violent activities that they take.
Are you ignoring our people whose money won't be the same by the time you'll be paying them? If there are those that didn't supply, those that didn't perform, we say take appropriate action, but don't punish those who genuinely provide the service to government.
And leader of the opposition in Parliament, Brian Mondobile, has urged President Hakainde Hichilema to stop shielding ministers being named in corrupt practices, but allow investigative wings in the country to do their jobs without interferences.
We want the Anti-Corruption Commission to treat the information that came from Comrade Fube and Munia Zulu as a raw material. Let them use that information to investigate.
Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
United Party for National Development, UPND Wengwa, Member of Parliament, Kasautu Michelo, and Patriotic Front, PF Chulubi, Member of Parliament, Mulenga Fube, were Friday morning sent out of Parliament for arguing in the House. This was after Leader of the Opposition in Parliament, Brian Mondobile, raised a concern that 50 members of Parliament from the opposition were planning to protest against the Democratic Summit scheduled for next week. In passing ruling, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Attractor Kisangano, asked the two members of Parliament to leave the House after they failed to come to terms over the matter. Meanwhile, Mines Minister Paul, more in this report.
Members of Parliament have continued to use the floor of the House to settle scores, despite the Speaker of the House having on several occasions guided that the floor of the House should never be used to settle scores. Friday, 24th March 2023, United Party for National Development, UPND Wengwa, Member of Parliament, Kasautu Mijelo, and Patriotic Front PF Chilubi, Member of Parliament, Mulenga Fube, were sent out of Parliament for arguing in the House after Leader of the Opposition, Brian Mondobile, announced that about 50 opposition members of Parliament had planned to stage a protest against the Democratic Summit scheduled for next week, in which United States Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to address.
I want to be very clear that 50 members of Parliament are preparing their constituencies to demonstrate against what they believe is a promotion of LGBT rights through the summit on democracy.
Point of order.
Madam Speaker.
Order, Leader of Opposition.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
That issue was already brought out by another member, and I ruled to say that please can you find another avenue to raise that matter, because you are repeating the same matter.
While the Deputy Speaker was trying to restore order in the House, some parliamentarians took advantage of the situation to settle scores, which resulted in the Deputy Speaker to act by sending the two members of Parliament out of the House.
Madam Speaker, is very important, and I feel very strongly about it.
Point of order.
No.
Point of order.
Are we going to wait for 50 members to demonstrate?
Point of order.
Is that what we want? Are we going to wait for 50 members to demonstrate?
Point of order.
No. It's not.
Point of order.
Order, honorable members. We have become unruly. Let us make progress. Question answer understanding order number 76. Order, honorable members. The honorable member for Chilubi. The honorable member for Chilubi is arguing with which MP on the right? Order, honorable members. The honorable members for Wengwa and the honorable member for Chilubi, please leave the house.
Meanwhile, Tourism Minister Rodney Chikuse says government is aware of the animal conflicts in Chama district and that government is working round the clock to resolve the matter.
I think it's something that people need to understand, that those animals used to roam freely in those game management areas. And then obviously we set up districts, and when districts were set up, some individuals, I'll call them unscrupulous individuals, started getting titles for those pieces of land and unfortunately fencing them. So yes, we have that pressure, but we are looking at ways and means on how we are going to lessen the interaction of wildlife and humans.
Meanwhile, Mines Minister Paul Kabuswe took time to explain what government is doing to ensure that the mining sector abides to the law in conducting their businesses.
No mine, and I want to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, is going to operate while abrogating the rules of that license. We are going to follow the Mines and Minerals Act to the latter.
Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
The Lusaka City Council, LCC, says it is evaluating the possibility of engaging JEB Laboratories Limited in the supply of materials that will be used for road maintenance in the Central Business District. Speaking at the demonstration of the patching of some potholes in Lusaka, LCC Public Relations Officer Chola Mwamba says the local authority will be comparing the new technology presented by JEB Laboratories against the use of asphalt, which the country has been exposed to. Ms. Mwamba further says JEB Laboratories will not be directly engaged in the maintenance of the roads, but that they will only be suppliers of the materials to local companies that will be hired to maintain the roads. Meanwhile, JEB Business Development Officer Chikobo Mudenda says the material that his company has been producing has a long lifespan of at least 3 years, as opposed to the asphalt, which requires constant maintenance.
We have JED Laboratories on the ground to demonstrate what they are calling a cheaper product as compared to the product that we use for pothole mending. As you can see, they are still on the ground to do the work. After their work, we are going to evaluate as a local authority and see if the competitive advantages between what we have on the ground and what they are trying to apply. What they are saying is that they are going to use port tech, and we have been using gravel and bitumen. For them, their healing time or curing time for the road is lesser, which is 30 minutes. So all those comparative advantages, we are going to evaluate them after the work.
It will be in the ground for a minimum of 3 years. So once you mend your potholes now, you only be coming back after 3 years, because you've noticed that with the current technology, we keep on going back every after 1 month or 2 months, especially in the rainy season. Whereas this one, once we seal, we are looking at 3 years.
This is Camnet Television's main news. We'll take our first break. We'll be back with more news after the break.
You know I can take her a bit.
Yes, my dear.
I was thinking of getting you a Bugatti on your birthday.
Really?
I'm quiet. My name is Yana.
Don't worry, my dear. That's why there is insurance.
Insurance?
You heard me.
Not just any kind of insurance, but Savenda General Insurance, a company that offers superior customer service, highly professional and dedicated staff. We are not just any insurance company, but an insurance company that actually pays our claims. We cover, among others, fire, marine, aviation, engineering, agriculture, motor vehicle, and miscellaneous insurance. So, Live life to the full, knowing that Savenda General Insurance has got you covered. Savenda General Insurance. Insurance excellence.
Your skin is the biggest muscle in your body. That's why we make sure that Oracle is #1 when it comes to taking care of your precious skin. Oracle Pure Petroleum Jelly and Glycerin soothes, moisturizes and keeps your skin perfect. Oracle Pure Petroleum products for that perfect skin.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Welcome back. We'll continue with our news. The LUSAKA magistrate under the Specialized Economic Financial Crimes Court has convicted and sentenced former Development Bank of Zambia DBZ Managing Director Dr. Samuel Walia to 15 months imprisonment with hard labor for corrupt practices involving 781,195 kwacha 78 ngwe. Delivering judgment Friday, Magistrate Friday Samaundu found Dr. Walia guilty in all 12 charges, indicating that he used public funds to pay for his children's school fees abroad. More in this report.
15 months imprisonment. That's the time Dr. Samuel Walia, a former Development Bank of Zambia Managing Director, will have to stay in a correctional facility after the Lusaka Magistrate Court Friday morning found him guilty of corrupt practices charges. On the 14th of December 2021, the Anti-Corruption Commission arrested Dr. Walia and slapped him with 12 counts of abuse of authority of office. The state had gone into trial calling various witnesses in the matter after he denied the allegations. However, after hearing testimonies, the court found him with a case to answer and placed him on his defense. Court records indicates that on multiple occasions between the 1st of May 2020 and the 30th of July 2021, Dr. Walia, while holding his position as Managing Director of DBZ, did abuse the authority of his office in the manner he directed 12 separate payments to different schools in the United Kingdom, South Africa and Zambia, amounting to a total 781,195 kwacha for his children using public funds belonging to the bank, an act prejudicial to the rights and interests of the government. Delivering judgment this morning, Lusaka Magistrate Friday Samaundu found that there was no evidence that he approached the legal and human resource over his children's allowance. The court also established in its judgment that he was not qualified to get an education allowance, as he claimed during his defense, as it was his predecessor who was entitled. In passing its judgment, the court has also observed that the misuse of public funds has become common among civil servants. The magistrate passed a 1-year 3-month sentence, with hard labor taking into consideration that the money was later recovered. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
State House Chief Communications Specialist Clayson Hamasaka has told the Lusaka Magistrates Court that he was shocked and speechless to learn that an opposition politician like Savoy Imboela, who should uphold the spirit of speaking the truth, would issue derogatory remarks against him on her Facebook page. When the matter came before Magistrate Sylvia Munyinya, Mr. Hamasaka testified that the accused Facebook postings were libel, as they alleged that his marriage was on the rocks because of him committing adultery. Mr. Hamasaka was testifying in a matter in which National Democratic Congress leader Sawoi Imboela is facing 2 counts of libel contrary to Section 191 of the Penal Code, Chapter 8 of the laws of Zambia. More in this report.
Standing in the witness dock Friday afternoon was State House Chief Communications Specialist Clayson Hamasaka, testifying in a case in which he has alleged that opposition politician Sawoi Imboela issued derogatory remarks against him on a Facebook page. In what might seem as an emotional testimony, Mr. Hamasaka told LUSAKA Magistrate Silva Munyinya, who is presiding over the case, how the alleged defamatory words published against him by Ms. Imboela have left him with a low self-esteem and destroyed his reputation he built for over 25 years. In this matter, the state have slapped the National Democratic Congress leader Sawoi Imboela with 2 counts of libel contrary to Section 191 of the Penal Code, Chapter 87 of the laws of Zambia. According to his testimony before court, State House Chief Communications Specialist says on the 9th of September 2022 he was on duty on the Copper Belt. Whilst there, he received various calls from his friends and family who called him to find out if he had seen a Facebook article written against him on a page called Sawoi Imboela SI. He testified that he checked the said Facebook article later, which contained malicious statement against him. In cross-examination, the defense argued that Mr. Hamasaka was not the one referred to in the post, adding that he is not the only one with that name in the country. However, before the court would proceed to hear testimony from another state witness, the accused requested for an adjournment through his lawyers on ground that she was feeling dizzy and needed to seek medical attention. The court granted the application, adjourning the matter to the 29th of March 2023. Allegations before court alleges that Ms. Imboela on the 9th of September 2022 in Lusaka, jointly and whilst acting together with other persons unknown with intent to defame, unlawfully did publish defamatory matter against Clayson Hamasaka on a Facebook page called Sawoi Imboela SI, stating, as I quote, "His farm is being developed by the Chinese and is a character I said had permanent rooms at hotels, sleeping with women that want jobs in the United Party for National Development. You are the ghost, terrorizing women," end of quote. She further alleged that Mr. Hamasaka was caught committing adultery by his wife and his marriage is on the rock. Earlier, Mr. Hamasaka indicated to the court that his marriage was not on the rock and he was not having any issues with his wife. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
This is Camnet Television and not just another channel. We'll take a second and final break. Join us for more news in international sports after the break.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet Television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Welcome back. Camnet Television News continues. Paul RUSESABAGINA, who was portrayed as a hero in the Hollywood film Hotel Rwanda and was serving a 25-year sentence in Rwanda on terrorism charges, has had his sentence commuted by presidential order. The announcement was made by a Rwanda government spokesperson on Friday. Here's a roundup of international news for more.
So Paul RUSESABAGINA, the man whose story was featured in the Hollywood film Hotel Rwanda, is due to be released from prison. In 2021, he was sentenced to 25 years on terrorism charges tied to an organization opposed to Rwandan President Paul Kagame. RUSESABAGINA worked as the manager of a hotel in Kigali during the 1994 genocide and saved the lives of more than 1,200 people. Malcolm Webb is joining us from Goma. Malcolm, what are you learning?
We've heard from the Rwandan government that Paul Rusesabagina is to be released either later today or possibly on Sunday, in spite of 1.5 years ago having been sentenced to 25 years for terrorism, as you said. Now, we know that the US has been putting pressure on the Rwandan government for his release. Rusesabagina has a permanent right to live in the United States. President Paul Kagame of Rwanda has mentioned this once or twice over the last month, saying that this situation at some point might be resolved. Now, Rwandan government sources have said that Rusesabagina has written a letter to President Kagame pleading clemency. We don't know if that's true or not, but it would certainly be at odds with everything that Rusesabagina and his associates have said since he was detained in August 2020 in what was widely described as a kidnapping or abduction. He was in Dubai at the time and was deceived and boarded a plane that was paid for by Rwanda's government and flown to Kigali against his will. His detention and trial followed that, and throughout the trial he refused to participate. He said it wasn't fair, as did international legal watchdogs and rights groups.
Malcolm, put a little bit more context, and you've begun to do so, context around this for us, because Paul Rusesabagina is considered a hero by many internationally and then convicted on terrorism charges domestically.
Well, he had become a critic of Rwanda's president, Paul Kagame, and there was some videos on YouTube that indicated that he was affiliated with a political opposition group that was also connected to an armed group here in Democratic Republic of Congo that wanted to overthrow Rwanda's government. This was evidence that Rwanda said indicated that he was guilty of the crimes with which he was eventually tried, but legal rights groups say that evidence was never presented meaningfully in court in that trial that they said was unfair. Now, political opposition and rights groups in Rwanda have for decades documented disappearances, assassinations and detentions of government critics. So in that sense, there was nothing new about these complaints. But what was different in this case is that Hollywood had already told the story, and they said Rusesabagina was a hero. And so when he was produced in Kigali in a pink jumpsuit wearing handcuffs, that caused outcry, particularly in the US, which resulted in, we understand, substantial diplomatic pressure from America on Rwanda over the subsequent couple of years.
Malcolm Webb reporting on this for us from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you.
Tuberculosis, or TB, is a disease that's preventable, treatable, and even curable. Yet, it's killing 1.6 million people each year, making it a leading infectious killer after COVID-19. It's caused by bacteria that spread through the air and mainly affect the lungs. The pathogen is hard to detect. No country is free of TB, but these 8 nations account for more than 2/3 of infections and deaths globally. All age groups are at risk, but people with poor immune systems are at a higher risk, like those living with HIV. In 2021, nearly 190,000 people died from HIV associated with TB. The only licensed vaccine, the BCG, is more than 100 years old. It's effective in children, but not adults, who account for most transmissions. TB is treated with antibiotics, but its resistance to drugs is rising. With only 7 years left to reach the World Health Organization's End TB milestone, the race is on for a new and more effective vaccine.
It's now time for sports news. In our sports news tonight, meanwhile, the FIFA Women's World Cup fever has reached Zambia with a delegation from Zurich in the country to display the most coveted prize in the ladies' game. FIFA Trophy Tour manager Julia Tekelimias presented the trophy at Mulungushi International Conference. Kenneth Kaunda Wing to Ministry of Youth, Sport and Arts Permanent Secretary Kangwa Chileshe, FAS President Andrew Kamanga and General Secretary Iva Lengwe. Members of various grassroots organizations involved in the women's game are part of the event that is meant to build up momentum for the World Cup. Copper Queens coach Bruce Mwape and some members of his technical bench and playing staff are part of the event. FAS Women's representative Kenel Priscilla Katoba is also part of the event. Members of the public will also have an opportunity to view the trophy. Zambia is one of 4 African countries that will host the trophy, with others being Morocco, South Africa and Nigeria as qualified teams. 32 countries will battle it out at the Australia-New Zealand FIFA Women's World Cup that kicks off on the 20th of July to August 20. Zambia is in Group C alongside Spain, Japan and Costa Rica. As we end our news tonight, the headlines once again. A LUSAKA male adult dies on the spot after being crushed by a loader. CCZ disapproves government's move to offer Kenyan farmers land. PF urges government to reintroduce subsidies on essential commodities. In international news, Hotel Rwanda hero Paul RUSESABAGINA'S prison sentence commuted. And in sports news, Zambia under-23 confident they can beat Egypt on Sunday. Our Camnet verse of the day is coming from Psalms 69 verse 6. May those who hope in you not be disgraced because of me, O Lord, the Lord Almighty. May those who seek you not be put to shame because of me, O God of Israel. Thank you once again for watching the news. My name is Jeffrey Ziambo. Bye-bye.